free to go whenever you'd like.
Okay, I will call this Tigard City Council meeting to order. City Recorder, roll call, please.
Councillor Lube.
Here.
Councillor Anderson.
Here.
Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Youth Councillor Calderon.
Here.
Council President Goodhouse.
Here.
And Councillor Newton.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Nolup, would you please put up the flag, and then we will all participate on our own. Okay, let's move on the agenda to council or staff. Any non-items?
Mr. Mayor, this is Marty Wine, City Manager. Staff have no non-agenda items this evening.
City Manager, want to confirm you don't have any non-agenda items, correct?
That's correct.
Mayor, I think your connection's
Okay.
off again. It's you're cutting out.
Okay. Let me see what I can do. How am I now?
A little bit better. That was better. Seems to be better now. I'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So I heard no non-agenda items. We're going to move on to public comment. Follow up to previous public comment. City Manager Wine, any follow up to previous public comments?
Mr. Mayor, no follow-up tonight.
All right. Public comments received electronically for this meeting in writing. We received 7 different communications. Has the council all gotten a chance to review those? We have written communication from Rupert Reinstadler about systemic racism, or really, I guess I would summarize that as there is no such thing as systemic racism, was his, I think, statement. Ms. Perry, illegal fireworks. Mr. Lewis, fireworks. Ms. Schill, more testing needed for COVID-19. We have communication from someone with the last name of D'Souza about making mask wearing voluntary. We had another one from Ms. Arns with a similar request about making mask wearing voluntary and not mandatory. And then Mr. Murray commenting about how a manager at the Lowe's store was not wearing a mask. Has the entire council had a chance to review those written public comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and then there was oh, maybe you summarized the other one already. Never mind, thanks.
I guess since we're receiving these in this format, we typically, do some sort of an evaluation, and we'll certainly be managing these as they come into the city council as feedback. But is there anything specific that members of the council want to address or suggest that we address in these written public comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
really quick, Councillor Newton here. I believe that there were 2 requests that the council consider making a mask wearing voluntary. And my understanding is that we don't have the ability to be less stringent than state law. Is that correct? I just wanted to make sure that people understand that.
Yeah, that is my understanding as well, Councillor Newton, and that was actually going to be a point that I considered making. We do not have the authority to, that I'm aware of, to choose to violate the governor's order. City Attorney Rahala, can you confirm that for us?
Yes, Council, I can confirm that. As a public place, the city has to comply with the governor's orders. We have stricter orders in terms of requiring masks for our staff, but for the public place, the rules are mask wearing is mandatory.
And we do not have the authority to change that within our city limits.
Correct.
To something that is less stringent than the governor's order.
No, we can go more stringent, which is what we have done, but we cannot go less stringent.
Okay. Thank you. And when you, I just want to clarify, City Attorney Rahala, when you say we've gone more stringent, we're talking about within city spaces, we have not, at least that I'm aware of, we've not taken action to say something is, or something in public is even more required than what the governor's order is, like at the Safeway store, right?
Correct. No, the only thing that we've done to be more stringent is in regards to our staff. So the governor's orders for areas that are not public spaces, the governor's order doesn't address those, but we have required even in non-public spaces in city buildings, all employees have to wear masks.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other council feedback or comments or observations about the public comment? All right, we will move on to any phone-in public comments. Mr. Nullup, do we have any calls to patch through?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any calls at this time.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is used for routine items such as approval of minutes, receipt of council meeting calendars, proclamations, and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements with partner agencies. Approval may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Anyone may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have one item, which is to consider a contract award for a Cook Park artificial turf infield purchase and installation. Are there any questions? Otherwise, is there a motion?
I'd just like to make a quick comment and say how excited I am about this being passed. I know especially our Tigard Little League did a lot of work to advocate for it and push for it. And I'm excited for the environment that the kids will get to play on and for the potential benefits to bring in with tournaments and things like that. So this is really just stepping up Cook Park and allowing for the kids to be able to play more often with that field. So with that, I'd move for adoption of the consent agenda as presented.
Council President,
I'll second that.
I second that.
All right, it was seconded by Councilor Anderson first, I think. So we'll go with that. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilor Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder,
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse,
Yes.
and Councilor Newton.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda has passed unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to
As a
item
host.
number 4.
Call in host. Show recording is on.
Is now exiting.
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. That's our ungraceful exit of our call-in service.
I'm getting used to it, actually.
Okay.
Get good at this COVID stuff. Okay, consider item number 4. Consider resolution appointing Tigard Library Board member and alternate. Director Bernard for staff report, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Councilors. I am happy to be with you here tonight for this appointment. Due to the 4-year term for Library Board member Joseph Callahan and the 1-year term for alternate Alicia Turner, ending on June 30th, 2020, the library went through a recruitment process for the appointment of new members. 4 applicants applied for 1 voting member position and 1 alternate member position. The Mayor's Appointment Advisory Committee, consisting of Councilor Heidi Lube and myself, held virtual interviews of the 4 applicants on Thursday, May 28th. We were so impressed with the level of engagement and enthusiasm that the candidates brought to their interviews, and we are so appreciative of how invested the Tigard community is in our library. The recommendations of this advisory committee were submitted to Mayor Snyder for approval and are now before the council for approval by resolution. Jim Ivler and Helen Allen are the 2 prospective appointees, and they are here with us virtually tonight. Biographies of each applicant have been provided in the packets for the council. Thank you for your consideration.
All right. Well, first of all, Mr. Ivler and Ms. Allen, thank you for attending. And it's, I know, awkward for us to be doing this virtually at this time. Normally, I'd be inviting you up after we pass the resolution and be shaking your hand and giving you a City of Tigard pin. We'll have to get you the pin. I'm sure Director Bernard will get you a City of Tigard pin mailed to your house probably. And I want to just congratulate you after we take this action. So is there any council discussion or a motion?
I would just like to go ahead and echo Library Director Bernard's comments. We were so lucky to have 4 great applicants, but I'm really excited for the perspectives and enthusiasm these 2 bring to the library board. So with that, I move to approve resolution number 20-39.
I'll second, Councilor Newton.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Clerk, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 20-39, a resolution appointing Jim Ivler to the Tigard Library Board for a term of 4 years and appointing Helen Allen as an alternate for a term of 2 years.
City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
And Councilor Newton?
Yes.
All right, resolution 20-39 is adopted unanimously, and I want to congratulate both of the appointees. I'm not sure I've gotten to even see your face since you haven't spoken, so perhaps you want to just briefly say something so everybody can see you and congratulate you.
Hi, I'm Jim Ivler. I'm really pleased both to be a resident, my wife and I, in the City of Tigard, and particularly to be a member of the board of the library. So thank you, Council and Mayor.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
And then Helen?
Good evening, all. Helen Allen here. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I am really excited to learn more about what the library board does and to be a more active member of the Tigard community. So thank you very much. It's nice to meet you all virtually.
Yes. And thank you both for volunteering to participate and support your community. It's really appreciated, and you know, it sounds like the selection committee had a very challenging time with a bunch of qualified applicants. So congratulations and good night. You're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like. I'm not trying to uninvite you, but thank you. We are going to move on to item number 5, which is to consider a resolution appointing a member to the Water Advisory Board. Mr. Goodrich, staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is my first virtual meeting with Council, and so hopefully I won't mess up too bad. Tonight we're bringing forward a new citizen representative for the at-large member for the Water Advisory Board. This is a new position. The Water Advisory Board is a fairly new board for the city, and this is the first citizen representative that we're bringing forward to Council. The WAB, or the Water Advisory Board, is an advisory board that makes recommendations to the Tigard City Council on significant water service issues. This board replaced the Intergovernmental Water Board for those members among the public that might remember that particular board. The WAB membership consists of 3 governing board members that are appointed by their respective governing agencies. That would be the Tigard Water District, the City of Durham, and of course the City of Tigard. And there are 2 at-large members that represent the general interests of the Tigard Water Service area, with 1 member representing Tigard and the other member representing the area outside Tigard, but still within the Tigard Water Service area. The 2 at-large positions currently are open and unfilled. The Water Advisory Board governing members interviewed or conducted interviews on December 12, 2019. There were 3 candidates that had come forward for the at-large position that was outside of the City of Tigard. After interviews by the Water Advisory Board, there was a decision that was made on April 8th, 2020, that the outside position, they had a recommendation to recommend an appointment, and this position would be serving from the present to an expiration date of December 31, 2021. At this time, what we would like to do is move forward the nomination and appointment of Miss Marie Wakowitz, and she lives in the Hightor area and had applied for this position. She is here tonight as well, and the staff is making a recommendation that the council adopt a resolution that appoints Miss Wakowitz at the at-large WAB member. With that, I'll leave it to any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Goodrich. Any council questions or a motion? And then we will hopefully congratulate and meet the new appointee.
Hi, Councilor Lube again. I just want to say that I'm really excited for the knowledge that Ms. Wakowitz brings. She has extensive knowledge in regards to water and facilities, and so she just brings a really great perspective. I would also add that we do still have an at-large member for Tigard specific open, that we're having difficulty in finding someone wanting to serve. So if you or anybody you know would like to serve on the water board, please come. We have some really interesting discussions. We can take you on a tour. It's really cool. So please join us. We meet every other month and have some really interesting topics, because we don't think much about when we turn on our faucet and this delicious, great water comes out. But with that, I would like to move to approve Resolution 20-40.
Council President Goodhouse, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution 20-40, a resolution appointing Marie Wakowitz as an at-large member of the Water Advisory Board, representing the interests outside of the city boundary.
All right, City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 20-40 is adopted unanimously. And Ms. Wakowitz, are you able to briefly say hi so we can see you and congratulate you?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to meet you and the rest of the council, and appreciate Ms. Lube's support. I'm very excited to be part of the Water Advisory Board, to be supporting the community in that way, and to look forward to participating.
Awesome. Well, thank you for agreeing to participate. And it sounds like your background and experience are going to be very valuable to the group. So thank you very much. And Mr. Goodrich, can you make sure that we get Ms. Wakowitz a City of Tigard pin as well?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will take care of that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Congratulations and thank you for joining us. We are going to move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is to consider approval of a contract for River Terrace West and South concept planning. It looks like this is being presented by a number of staff. So Purchasing Manager Moody and Senior Planner Warren, are you present and ready?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Mayor. Christine, good evening, Mayor Schneider and councilors. I'm Christine Moody. I'm the purchasing manager. We are here tonight asking for your approval to award a contract to OTAC for the River Terrace West and South concept planning in the amount of $499,008. In March, the city issued a qualification-based selection for proposals, request for proposals, and on April 14th, 2020, we received 4 responses. Staff reviewed and scored the proposals based upon the evaluation criteria of project understanding and approach, consultant team qualifications, consultant team experience with similar projects, and diversity in contracting. 2 firms were then asked to submit pricing proposals for final selection. The selection committee concluded that OTAC was the highest ranked proposal and the best to perform this work. I will now turn this over to Skylar Warren, Associate Planner and Project Manager, to tell you a little bit more about this project.
Good evening, Mayor Schneider and councilors. I'm Skylar Warren, Senior Planner and Project Manager for the River Terrace Concept Planning Project. The River Terrace West and South Concept Planning Project is an important first step in setting the vision for the 2 urban reserve areas known regionally as Roy Rogers West and East. This project is timely. It aligns with other projects to plan for future sewer and transportation infrastructure in the area, as well as the concurrent work to develop a community plan for King City West, which will rely on critical infrastructure connections through River Terrace South. In addition, it provides the city an opportunity to be one of the first in the state to plan for a broad diversity of housing options in large-scale greenfield development after the passage of House Bill 2001 and 2003 in the city's own housing options amendment package. This opportunity is intricately tied with Tigard and King City's mutual goals to foster a diverse, equitable, walkable, and sustainable neighborhood. This project meets the strategic plan goal number 2 to ensure development meets the vision, and council goal 3 to secure outside resources to perform this work. The contract is supported by a grant from Metro and the city's contract with the Metropolitan Land Group. And in accordance with Council Goal 3, city staff recently applied for and received a grant of $60,000 from the Department of Land Conservation and Development that will cover the costs of the required housing needs analysis that will be performed as part of this project. So, unless there are any questions on any of that, I will turn it back over to Christine.
And I was, Mayor Schneider, I was just, if you have any questions about the solicitation process, I can answer those. Otherwise, we're asking for approval of award of the contract.
Okay, thank you. Council questions. Youth Councilor Calderon, any questions or comments?
Not at the moment.
Councilor Newton.
Yeah, really quick, Skylar. Just so I understand, the way that this planning process is set out is sort of prescribed by the Metro concept planning process, right? I mean, there's elements that we're going to be looking at that are in line with the requirements for the Metro concept plan. The reason I'm asking is I'm always concerned when we don't identify public safety as something we're looking at. And so I don't know if that's later or if, when that particular, I'll call it service, gets looked at in such a large area that's going to be developed.
Can I ask for clarification? Do you mean public safety in terms of fire and police response, or?
Yes. Yeah, because that's a big area that's going to have to be served. It's not like annexations that we've done over the, in the past where it's a subdivision or something, but it's a pretty big area. And so I'm always curious when that particular, and I'm getting down in the weeds here, but I'm always curious as to when in the process we address public safety and how we're going to serve an area with public safety services. So that may be a question that we look at down the road, but I always wonder when that gets factored in, when that's going to get factored in.
So at this stage of planning, the concept plan is a very high level vision document that sets out the general land use parameters for the area, and that is done in accordance with the criteria in Metro's Urban Growth Management Functional Plan, which is, of course, those criteria are what Metro would use in determining whether these areas should be brought into the urban growth boundary or not. So public safety in that form is not necessarily one of the criteria that I looked at, but of course, as planning gets more detailed, we will certainly be working with our partners both at Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue and perhaps in the police to discuss, when it's appropriate to look at these things.
And that was my initial question, I assume that the elements of this study were going to be in line with the Metro concept planning requirements. So that was my question. And I was kind of assuming that going in, but I wasn't really sure. And I'm never sure when in the process that those things are considered. So thanks, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Councilor Lube.
Yeah, I just have a question, or rather just a confirmation. Our early discussions were that South River Terrace would come in regards to housing with the off year, but that we would concept plan for West River Terrace, but with the council direction that it also include employment land, which would mean that it would need to come in during a regular Metro cycle. I just want to confirm that that's the direction that we're taking, because I want to ensure with everything that we're doing and spending that we don't get to the end of this and realize that we're not focused on the employment land piece of it.
That is correct. And I do want to offer a caveat that, the concept planning process, part of the work that's going to be done is a market analysis on both commercial and residential uses. And that the results of that commercial analysis will give us a better idea of if and how many acres of employment lands we might be able to include in both the south and the west areas. We can actually include some supportive commercial areas in River Terrace South, even as part of the mid-cycle application under Metro's criteria. How much is yet to be determined. We would be the first city, I believe, to actually go through the mid-cycle application process. So that will be probably a bit of negotiation.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Anderson.
No questions. OTAC is they have an excellent reputation, and if I'm not mistaken, they worked on the first phase of the River Terrace planning. So I think it's a great choice.
Council President Goodhouse.
No questions.
Do we have a motion?
This is Councilor Anderson. I move for approval of the contract for River Terrace West and South concept planning.
Council President Goodhouse, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City recorders, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilor Lutz.
Yes.
Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councilor Newton.
Yes.
Okay, motion is adopted unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda, and I'm noting we are right on time, 7 p.m., so we have plenty of time for this topic. Discussion on racial justice and city action. I want to apologize to the council that I did not get my draft that ended up being a little more comprehensive than I thought I was originally going to put forth, and it did require rereading over 200 emails and different correspondence, written communication. But I did get it done last night. Because you didn't have it for a significant amount of time before tonight's meeting, I want to make sure that if that this can be an initial discussion, and if you have additional feedback, we can, after further review, we can certainly talk about it next week as well. But there's a couple of already significant suggestions or changes that I would like to make you all aware of, just so we don't have to discuss things that are probably going to be changing. So, and this is one part of the discussion. We also have the city's action plan, which City Manager Wine will speak to, and then you also received the compilation of communications, which totals almost 450 or close to 500 different individual comments from staff, the public, in both Facebook events, in written communication, etc. So that's the extent of what we have tonight. And does that sound like a reasonable way to start this conversation for everybody? Okay. So the two things I wanted to note that I've received feedback that I'm suggesting we accept, or I'm going to be accepting, unless all of you change it further. The first is in the section on Transformation Commission. The last bullet point, there was a suggestion that we change that language, and this actually came from a representative of our Black community, that we change that to 5 Tigard residents from the community at large, and striking the 4 must be people of color, but rather stating that we have a preference to those who can best represent people of color. So that's one change. The other change is I didn't have the right title for something in the training section. I had talked about a DPSST training that had been developed on the history of racism in Oregon. It is actually called Police Legitimacy and Procedural Justice Training. That was 7 hours long and ended up not being adopted or deployed. So I just wanted to clarify that in that section. And with that, I will open it up to feedback and discussion. Let's start with Council President Goodhouse.
And I'm going to take you up on that and look at it in more detail. I haven't had a chance to look at it too much today. One question I did have, though, and this might be something we'll discuss too. This seems to be all focused on safety. Are we going to focus on other areas too within the city and parts? Okay, so it's just kind of just a kickoff in this part, just on safety, and then we'll also work on other areas in the city or city itself.
Yeah, I would direct you to the second paragraph in the background that says, this is a draft framework for the City Council, staff, and community members to review and provide input on both the how and what in the public safety space. Similar community input and draft frameworks will be needed for all other areas of city operations. So that's acknowledged there in the second paragraph.
Okay. I don't have any comments offhand right now. I might after people start talking or like that, and I'll circle back around.
All right, Councilor Newton.
I had to unmute. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the time you took to develop this. I really appreciate having the opportunity to have taken a look. I just had a couple of things. I like the idea of the committee. I was a little bit concerned, and I like the idea of it being appointed a little bit differently than the city council just interviewing people. I was a little bit concerned, and this is down in the weeds that we can look at as we go, if they get tripped up in the appointment of members, if there's, you know, if we're going to have all these people that are the stakeholder group and they get a little tripped up trying to figure that out. I resist us stepping in to start directing it, but I think we just need to think about that. And if there's some need for that to how we can ensure that goes smoothly. I also, on the topic areas for commission to address, I agree these are generally the topics that we've heard about. They reflect what I haven't had a chance to read all 500, but generally the things I've heard. I think as we're moving this forward, it would be good to tell folks that these topics are based on what we've heard. And as this commission gets going, it may be that they have some thoughts, something might come to raise to the top for them. I think we need to let them set the priorities of the things that they think are important. And then as you are underlying under the different topics, you have similar questions for each one. They may have questions, issues, topics. So I would want to make sure that they understand that this is just the way we see it flowing based on the issues that we've heard. And then back on, let's see. I think we'll fill in the part about the school resource officers. And I like the idea of looking at the item under that about a non-police response for mental health. That might even get spun off a little from this. And then I started thinking on the last page, we talk about stop making traffic stops for violations and instead record them on video and have officers issue citations. You know, it occurred to me, and this is something for our police department to weigh in and perhaps our judge, there may be things that we want our traffic officers to focus on. I thought of the fact when I worked there, there was a lot of cell phone violations. And so instead of stopping folks for things that were more minor infractions, the judge and the police and the committee might decide, we're going to focus on cell phone violations. And so we're going to focus on everybody or anytime we see something like that. And those are the folks we're going to pull over and try to educate about the concerns we have with cell phone violations. So just something I thought about. We might even be able to some of these topics might evolve into other service areas, like, for example, traffic safety. So, you know, I think we need to be open to that. So those are my initial comments. And again, I may have more comments. I want to read again. I want to read this. I also read the staff paper as well, and I might want to take another look and then read some more of the comments that we've received. So thank you.
All right, Youth Councilor Calderon.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was just gonna say I love this plan. It seems it's pretty great, and I was just gonna say on the 5 Tigard residents, maybe don't like fully take out the people of color requirement, just lower it, because I don't like, even though they might have the best interest, I think a lot of people would feel more comfortable if they saw another person of color on that, in that 5 people, in the 5 residents. And then the other thing I was going to ask is, would it be possible for those 5 residents after the first year to be chosen by that commission? So they have like their own level of autonomy to decide who is on their council, or is that something that would be chosen by the city?
Well, the way I have this structured right now, this broader group of stakeholders, the community advisors would be the ones that would select, at least currently select the commission. Now that, that is debatable whether that's the right structure, but that is, I had not originally proposed this, and I got feedback that it was really important that a broader group of people in the community are able to have input on who is in, or who is representing the bigger group of folks in the community. So certainly your feedback is valuable on that. I'll make a note about it, but I think we'll have to see what kind of feedback we get and what the right way to approach this is. But I'll make a note of that. And then Youth Councilor Calderon, can you actually send me, you don't have to write much, but just on the bullet point that you were wanting to change, could you just send me your suggested language in an email, so that I can look at that specifically?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay.
And then the last thing I had to say is, would it be possible for us to create a survey around most of these topics to send back to people that have, like the people that send us emails regarding racial justice and what they want to see, just so we have like statistics supporting why we have these on for the commission to address?
I think that should be a question that the commission starts with, whether or not that, like, because I think part of what will matter is how are the questions framed, or how are how is the topic framed, how are the questions asked. Depending on what you ask, you get different, sometimes different results. So Youth Councilor Calderon, would you be okay with me adding that to one of their accountabilities?
Yes, of course. And then that's all I have. Thank you.
Let me make a note real fast and then we'll move on. Okay, let's go to Councilor Lube.
Yes, the document is very detailed, and thank you for putting it all in. I think it's difficult to sift through all of those comments and sort of pick out those big areas, those for the commission to address. And so thank you for spelling it out. It actually made it really helpful. It's also, I think, a little overwhelming to look at the entire list and see all of the different areas I think that we need to work on and discuss. I like the idea of having the commission, once it's formed, be able to sort of pick the items to tackle first, what's most important, because some of these I think these topics can take 6 months to do correctly, especially at like a police review commission, and what does that mean? It can take a significant amount of time. So I also want to open up the opportunity to maybe even have like a sub work group within a commission to be able to flesh something out and work something out to recommend to the commission. Because I look at this and I think it's all really good work, but I worry that it's also incredibly overwhelming to think about trying to tackle this with one committee. So I just think that would be an interesting way to do it, just to be able, some bigger chunks, section it off and have work groups make recommendations. I also want to talk about making sure during these meetings there's also opportunities for experts to weigh in. I think we have a lot of really great research and such, but there's a good opportunity for us to bring in experts in their fields, and really support our mission to be a data-driven organization. So while these resident opinions are really, really important, I also want to make sure that the decisions that we're making are backed by some really good data. So I think that's important as well. The only other thing I would say is anytime there is a voting committee, I always like an odd number. I know that in here the goal says to have a consensus, but there's just part of me that, always wants an odd number when there's voting going on.
Well, and I think that would be particularly important if we were talking about something where it was going to be just a strict democratic, 50% plus one vote. But I strongly believe that this, and we can debate this if the rest of the council feels differently, but I had tried to structure it so that it would require most of the committee members to agree with something, not 6 or 7 out of 13. But that's where I set that 10 out of 12 standard. We could debate about whether that's the right number, or should it be 10 out of 13 to get to an odd number. I don't know, but that's certainly, thank you for that feedback, Councilor Lube. Anything else?
No, after a first glance today, those are the things that popped out for me.
All right, thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Not much to add. At first glance, I thought it was a very good document as well. I agreed with the main topics, and I have no problem with the commission structure. It's a draft, so it's a very good start. We'll dig into it a little bit more this week. But, kudos to you. It was a lot of work, I'm sure, to compile all that.
Well, I felt like it needed to happen, and it was challenging, but I also think it would have been very hard to do by committee or any other way. How does the council feel if I were to make the edits that you've given me tonight, or try to edit them, and then the few community members, that sort of trusted community leaders that I've asked for feedback on, how would you all feel about us throwing this out on the Community for All Tigard page and advertising it, and then inviting feedback from the community to react to the entire thing after I've done these initial edits? Or would you prefer waiting until next week? I asked the question because I feel somewhat of a high sense of urgency around trying to move some of this forward, and so every week we delay is just another week that this work is not beginning. How do you feel about all that?
I think that's a good idea. I also think, to put it out there now, I also think some of the questions that we've raised, the suggestions that we've made, we might want to indicate, like my question about if there's difficulty with, choosing the members or whatever. So any of the things that we've raised, things that we'd like to think about, maybe put those out too. So I think getting them involved in the drafting is a great idea. I think putting it out now is a good idea.
So, Councilor Newton, I can annotate some comments. If it's something where we're not making a change to the draft, but like your comment about,
sure,
potentially the community getting tripped up, I can
sure,
annotate that in the side kind of
right.
a note.
Yeah,
work?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and they might have some thoughts on that. So.
I think getting it out to the community as quickly as possible to start soliciting the feedback is a great idea. I also agree with the sense of urgency. We've done a lot of, we've heard a lot from our community members, and I'm ready to dig in and get started. So the sooner we can get it out and get some ideas and opinions on it to ensure that this is the way that our community wants to move forward, the better.
Okay. Councilor Anderson, Council President Goodhouse, any objection or concern with that?
No objection. I was just the only thing I saw looking through it, and we'll comment more too, was once this is formed and once it's in place, what kind of process for public input will be there as well? If during these meetings, if there would be a part where the public can either come and talk, interact as well or so forth, I think there might be an aspect of that would be great in there too, to continue during the process for public input or feedback.
Yeah, the purpose in part of the Transformation Community Advisors section on page 2 is to require that the commission actually go back to the broader group of people and listen to their feedback. So that's intended to be part of the process. I don't know whether it will be functional for the commission to actually take public testimony at every meeting, but maybe that's something they should. I'll add that to the list of things they should consider.
Yeah, I think that the only reason I thought that, I could see how it could maybe be a bit cumbersome, but also the more minds, the more thoughts, as each of these are coming worked out and fine-tuned, it would be good to get additional feedback or comments, or figure out some method to do that.
Okay, well, we'll leave that up to the commission is the way I'm going to propose that. I think they can decide how they want to structure that work, as long as there's this other loop back process to the broader community. Other comments? Youth Councilor Calderon, anything further from what everybody else had said, and also how you feel about publishing this quickly to get input?
Yeah, I think it's really important to get input from the public, so I think that we should do that as soon as we can, or as soon as you're done making these edits. And then the only thing I was going to say is, in response to Council President Goodhouse, his concern about public input, is to point out the fact that you advised that the 5 community members should be conducting regular listening and feedback sessions for them to get public input. And then I was going to say that the youth city councilor and the president of the Black Student Union will probably also be getting a good amount of input from youth. So I think that that would already cover most of public input.
Thank you. Let's move on to City Manager Wine. Did you have staff input on this initial draft that we should hear now, or and then I certainly want to make sure the council moves on to reviewing and providing input on the action plan, and I'll let you facilitate that part of the meeting if you're okay with that. But City Manager Wine, did you want to provide the staff input on this now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I could do that. Why don't I'll do that. And I didn't prepare a detailed presentation about the anti-racism action plan that the leadership team has been developing, because I recognized that you had a certain amount of time tonight that you wanted to discuss racial equity in general. And I knew that, so Mr. Mayor, I also am realizing that if I were a member of the community watching your meeting right now, I would probably not know what the council was talking about. So you put together a proposal for a transformation commission that you just received comments about, and so I guess I just want to acknowledge that there's probably a way for the proposal that you're drafting to be more widely commented on, and it sounds like there are others who have already suggested that. So just for context, I think I think, how do I say this? The community has also not had a chance to know or see that work has been underway on the administrative side on actions and an anti-racism action plan to become an anti-racist organization. And I think that that plus, as was mentioned, we've compiled the many community comments that have come in through all the doors that people knock on to give feedback to the city, and that all deserves to be, it's all been received and responded to, but not compiled or thematically organized so that it could provide some focus for you. So I didn't come prepared with a presentation tonight about the anti-racism action plan, except I wanted the council to know that that's been in development. I can say a little bit more about what that plan looks like, but the leadership team met this morning and looked at the proposal you have for the Transformation Commission. And our plan right now is to figure out how staff can support both the draft anti-racism action plan and also the proposed Transformation Commission. I think that as a group, what your leadership team wants you to know is that we think that this approach could be an effective step toward becoming a more anti-racist organization if done well. There are, so I would say the feedback we would offer would come in a group of 3 things. One would be an approach that includes learning. Another would be a help from a facilitator to support the commission's work, and then focusing by topic area on the things that are within the city's control. On the learning front, I think that if you want to have a response to all the comments that you've received and the things that you believe that the community believes, then you could, if your response is going to align with the problems that you see, that Learning about institutional racism and what it is and how it presents in Tigard and how to change it here, that is almost more important than the sense of urgency that I'm hearing that you want to act to address it. So learning about what it is, I think, important. Many of the topics on the list that I see for the commission have an education element to them. This has already been said by others, that in qualified immunity, chokeholds, issues related to bail, that those kinds of issues need informed recommendations and will probably require a major time investment to learn about and maybe make recommendations. So on the facilitation front, we all believe that we need help and support from an outside facilitator who could guide a group's work, and including when we're talking about our leadership team action plan. So that kind of support helps us be able to learn and what it is that we don't know, and also what we maybe can't see today. A lot of the advice that you've received so far in the form of input on your Facebook Live events and on social media is coming from those who are already comfortable with accessing city government in that way. And so it's inherently inequitable to only respond to that kind of feedback. I think we've talked a little bit about the digital divide, and there are people in our community who don't have access to the internet. And there are those who may not be able to devote intensive time to weekly meetings. So I think in the design, paying attention to not preventing participation by the people who you might want to hear from who don't have a comfort level with accessing our city government in the ways that we have made available would be useful. And then the idea of having consensus-based recommendations or consensus-based advice and evidence-based advice, I think thinking about a process for what happens when those two things conflict and how to resolve this and balance opinion and fact that we're receiving would be helpful. And then finally, I think the other bit of input that I'd offer from the leadership team on this design is that the idea of a commission or an advisory group should focus on what the city actually has the authority to change. So things like the use of body-worn cameras, the level of training that officers receive, workforce diversity, the way we deploy our resources, those are the kinds of things that the city actually has an intersection with and can change. So I know that a lot of the other topics are things that you could build into a list of things to advocate for, but if those are identified, that's also something we could create early. And then finally, we were struck by the focus on police services, which at the moment seems a little bit out of balance with all the rest of city services, and that's been said also. In our anti-racism action plan, what we've tried to do by department is begin to identify the ways that we think institutional racism might be presenting in the departments, and then figure out what needs to change. So our hope is that the anti-racism action plan encompasses work that can happen across the whole city. And maybe, as I said at the outset, I think that the work of a transformation commission and the anti-racism action plan can work in well. So having had a little bit of time to review the proposal and not a lot, I think that's, and I know that the chief and the union, the police union, and probably the city attorney and the judge will offer, feedback as soon as possible, but want some time to, I think, digest the proposal that you've put together. So those were the comments we were able to summarize today for you.
Thank you for that feedback. And I think it's important to recognize that, I think I acknowledge both in writing and the whole council, as you pointed out, recognize that this is focused primarily on public safety. And to be honest, we're responding and being responsive to the public and the public comments that we've gotten by prioritizing this first, because out of the hundreds of communications, almost all of them were specific to public safety. There were maybe 2 or 3 ideas in hundreds of emails and communications from the public and I recognize we have a lot more to worry about than just what the public is giving us input on, but almost all of those were exclusively on these topics or there were a few that I would say are kind of like on the margin, like becoming a My Brother's Keeper city. That was a question that I chose to not put into the public safety space, but some would argue maybe should be. And there were just, there were no comments, like the kinds of things that I think about with, for example, let's take community development as an example, like the kinds of things that I think we have to be thinking about more broadly, and that I don't see in the city's anti-racism action plan are things like, how do our community development policies and plans play into food deserts, or those kinds of things, or how are we going to prevent food deserts? That would be an example of a broad public policy issue that I think's got to be addressed, that's on the scale of some of these public safety types of issues. City Manager Wine, the other thing I guess I want to just maybe respond to, and this may warrant some more council discussion, so that's partly why I want to bring it up, is the feedback about things that are directly within the city's control. I certainly tried to be thoughtful about making sure that question was being asked, but I also think that it's really important for this commission to be able to explore and frankly push on things that, there's going to be things that are clearly outside our control. There are things that are clearly within our control, and then there's a bunch of gray area in between. And I think it's really important that the commission be able to explore that gray area and be in a position to both figure out what advocacy needs to happen, but also what is the limit if the decision of the commission is to try or a desire for a certain outcome, and let's say that 80% of it's within our control but 20% is not. I don't want them to be limited by that 20%, or maybe when it's really when they push hard, they get to the point of understanding that really we can control 80% of it, even though maybe from our original assessment by a staff member, it would have been more like 50-50 or 20-80 the other way. I think it's important that even issues that may appear to be things that are not directly in the city's control, that they do get to wrestle with them. And part of it is going to be, part of this is about the community coming to an understanding of what we can and can't change. And I think they're going to just have to work through some of that. But if I don't know how the rest, I think that's a really important point on this. So I kind of want to get the rest of the council's feedback about that before, because if we're going to focus on things that the city primarily has control over entirely, then that's going to potentially dramatically change the work of the commission. So Youth Councilor Calderon, do you have input on that?
Yeah, regarding like what the city can do and what they can't do, I don't think that we should limit them to only things that the city can do. They should be able to openly discuss anything that they want to, since that's something that's their job to. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Councilor Lube.
I would also say I think it's important to have these discussions as a community, regardless of whether or not the city can directly change it. And I think it will help guide the city as far as policy and where we can put time advocating on, a state or even federal level for policies that the city may not be able to change. But as a city, we can advocate on different levels for that change. So I think they're important discussions to have. We can't just silo specific things off. I think it's, we're acknowledging with these documents that it is a wide, broad problem, and we need to be able to discuss all aspects of that, even though we can't control all of it.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson?
Well, I think they should certainly bring up any topic that comes up. But as a practical matter, as an advisory committee, any actionable items have to really do what the city can actually accomplish. So I think there's probably a little bit of both there.
Okay, thank you. Council President Goodhouse.
I definitely think both areas should be focused on. I mean, there's the things that we can do as a city that should probably be looked at first. I don't know if there's a set order, but regularly we weigh in on topics, whether it be a county, state, or federal level, of topics where our opinion is or guidance for what direction should be. So I think if this committee does work on those items, there might be something too that more communities, as different communities are having committees like this, that there might be some kind of a source this can be submitted to, or it could always be something too that could be submitted to the League of Oregon Cities or the National League of Cities, or sent to the federal government, or sent to our state and federal representatives. I think it was something where we come together and we come in agreement on these things and say what new policy should be at the state and federal level. I think there should be a letter that should be sent to separate organizations or to our federal legislators to show support that our community is wanting this, demanding change in these areas. So I definitely think we need to discuss all those topics, and those that we can't directly change, that we can send to those that can change them.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Newton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hey, City Manager Wine, thanks for your comments. I thought they were very thoughtful, and you raised some really good points for us to think about. With regard to the topics, I think, you know, there's a practical matter in terms of what things the city can address and what things are outside of our purview. And I think it's important for the commission to know as we move forward that that's the case. And so I think I would be a little concerned about expectations, and I think maybe that's what City Manager Wine was alluding to, that there are certain things that are fairly easy for us to make changes, and other things that are going to be a little bit more of an uphill battle. And so I think if the commission wants to take some of those things on, if those are their priorities, then that's the decision of the commission. But I think we need to be you know, mindful going in and educate them in terms of what things might be a little more challenging as they address them, and what things are going to be a little bit easier to address because they're within the city's control. So I think it's, you know, if those are the topics they pick, I think we just have to be mindful about expectations. So that would be what I would say. So.
Okay, thank you. Let's transition to feedback for the city manager on the anti-racism action plan. I think that would be helpful. City Manager Wine, you were hoping to get that feedback, correct, tonight, or you want initial feedback, or what are you hoping to?
I would welcome initial feedback if I could. I guess for the benefit of folks who are watching the meeting and don't know what we're talking about, I'd like to just say a couple words about it. I think I referenced it a couple of minutes ago. Since the beginning of June, the leadership team has been committed to trying to strike that balance that I heard Mr. Mayor and the council, also you identify, which is a wish to take action, to really look at what it is that the city can change or should be changing, and have an understanding of what that might look like, but also an acknowledgement that we need, as an organization, and the people who work here, to have the tools and skills to lead by example, to become an anti-racist organization. So statements in the last couple of weeks have been made about change and taking steps to become an anti-racist organization. And I think that the purpose of the Anti-Racism Action Plan is to acknowledge that systemic racism exists, and that the actions that we have taken historically perpetuate it. And so understanding how to see that and change our own operations and structures that we've set up is important. And developing the tools as an organization to speak out and to act in an anti-racist way is what the the plan is centered around. And so even though, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned some specific things that you thought might be in there, and if that's the kind of feedback you have for us, I'm absolutely willing and open to taking that tonight. One of the things that across all of the departments that we realized as an organization that we'd need to do in order to make changes in our practices or in our services or in our outreach is to develop a language and a lens and a way to ask the question about how to make our services more equitable. Who are we not serving? Who is not coming to reach to us, and who should we be reaching to in terms of understanding what the community needs? So even though there may not be as specific actions as you might have hoped to see, we are trying to go department by department to figure out what are the things that we can change. And we named some early things, and I guess I would say with an acknowledgement that we may not be the ones who know or see what needs to change, and that's part of the reason why my opening comments, just even in response to the Transformation Commission idea, come from a place of needing to learn more about what we can do to be more equitable and to undo racism in our own organization and in our community. So those are just some framing comments. So what's at the center of this anti-racism action plan is developing our own lens to look at services and all city services, including our outreach and the way we interact with the community. So I won't make any more comments that are extensive. The leadership team is always invited to your council meeting. I guess I would like to, if they have comments or have something else that they'd like to add about how we are building this plan. It's really a commitment to do everything from diversify our workforce in the ways that we've been trying to do as we embarked on our diversity, equity, inclusion work last year, to the kinds of things, Mr. Mayor, that you just named, which is identify where the systemic racism and where the institutional racism that we're perpetuating can be broken down. So I'll leave it there. And then if you're willing to also entertain any comments from leadership team, if you have them.
Absolutely. Leadership team, anything? Perhaps not.
Okay. If not, then I'll just ask for council's feedback, such as you've seen it in the draft that you got. And just please know that's a work in progress.
Councilor Newton, you want to
okay. We just received the police department's input today. Kathy, go ahead.
So this is Kathy Nyland, the assistant city manager. So just to echo what City Manager Wine was stating, the proposal the leadership team and staff are working on will always be evolving. It's just, we're capturing the thoughts and possibilities right now, but it's going to be a living document because this is going to be an ongoing conversation. And as we proceed with department plans and continuing our program and projects, we hope to always have that equity lens on and viewing upcoming projects and programs through that lens. So I just wanted to emphasize that it's not a done deal. It's just going to be a living document that we will always refer to and constantly update.
Sorry, Toby. Go ahead. Thank you, Nadine. Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director. And Nadine, there we go. Can you turn off your mic, possibly? Thank you. And just to echo and add on, one of the things I'd say leadership team has been doing is been trying to balance between the recognizing that there's more that we don't know than we do know about institutional racism, and taking that learning lens while balancing that against the need to take action. So a major part of the document that council's received of our draft action plan involves a list of some very specific actions, things that we feel are things we can do in the near term. So we do hope to make some progress at the same time on removing institutional racism within the city of Tigard, at the same time that we're learning how to identify those places where we just don't see it yet. So it's trying to strike that balance between action and learning at the same time.
Any other leadership team members? Nadine, were you wanting to speak?
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, a lot of the public looks at the court as being part of the overall judicial system from enforcement through the courts. And so for me, it's been important that we look at how our policies and our rules are impacting people of color within our community, and so with the cityscapes, legislation, with looking at how so I just that we are looking at that we can look at the policy that we have in place to make sure that we're not negatively impacting people within the community. And we're seeing that with things that somebody had mentioned bail, but you know, we've in the past required people post the presumptive fine on their sites to be able to submit letters to the judge, and we've already made those changes. So, you know, the work is moving, and it feels small and it feels incremental, and we'll still need that equity lens when all is said and done. But I just wanted to, you know, reassure everyone that we are moving forward.
Thank you. Are we at a point where we can move forward to council comments? Councilor Newton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I took a quick read of the document. I was particularly enthused about the comment about reviewing services through an equity lens for equity and for equity outcomes. When we do that work, what is race that needs to change and change it? And we talked about that earlier too, about having an equity lens. So I'm wondering, develop a simple racial equity lens tool for Tigard. And I know you don't put something like that in place and then you're done and check the list. So can you talk to me a little bit about how that work is moving forward in terms of developing that equity lens for the review of services? Is that kind of a work in evolving?
I mean, I guess I'll just offer that our step one here is to, Mr. LaFrance identified our first step, which is figure out what it is we need to learn. And to do that, we're going to seek out help to do that. So we're not going to be developing an equity tool on our own. I know that there are others and, you know, other organizations who have done so, but they've done that through a facilitated process to be able to understand institutional racism to build that. So
part of that then is the education point and the learning part that you talked about that's so important in the beginning to understand the issue. And then also, I think it was Mr. LaFrance said, or maybe it was you that said, learn what you don't know, or maybe it was Ms. Nyland. But anyway, so that needs to happen as you move forward. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and the tool, I mean, in some cases, that tool consists of a series of questions that is asked, and I think that we have to go through that process.
That's all I have to ask.
Thank you. Council President Goodhouse, anything?
I just agree that I'm glad that we're looking at all parts of the city and getting the leadership team involved. And as Toby LaFrance said, I think there's a lot of areas that we may not know or not aware of, so it'll be a work in progress. And I'll review that as well, and you can talk more about it next week as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Well, at first blush, I think it's a very, it's a good document. I'm glad Assistant City Manager Nyland mentioned that it's a working document, because I think there's going to be some state and county stuff that, we're going to be a part of that it could change this document. Obviously, housing is regional, economic equity is regional. So, but there's specific things the city can do as well. So, no, I think it's a great start.
Councillor Lube?
Yes, I'd like to echo what Councillor Newton said, and also say one of the things that really struck me was under what we will do, engage someone to help us do the work, ensure we're not asking community of colors to solve the problem that was created by white people, and don't expect trainers, coaches, consultants, or anyone to do the work for us. I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes, I think probably in most cases, those writing the policy aren't always likely to see the roadblocks that are created by those policies. And I really applaud the idea and support bringing in an outside resource to analyze the barriers to access for our services. And that goes along with the educational aspect of learning what we don't know. And I think it's a really important piece to say, right now we don't know what those barriers are or who isn't accessing because of certain reasons, and how do we go ahead and reach those additional communities that we're not currently reaching. And I also want to applaud the leadership team for each of them taking individual responsibility and dedicating personal growth and learning opportunities in the document. So thank you to all of you who are taking on that work as well. And I hope as a council, we're all individually doing work as well.
Youth Councillor Calderon.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something like what Councillor Lube said. I think it's really important that everyone on the leadership team and in the city is reflecting on what we do know and what we don't know. And I just wanted to say that it's great that everyone is going to, or everyone on the leadership team has specific ideas for how they're going to educate themselves. Like I saw someone said that they're going to watch the 13 documentary, which is also on my list to watch. And I just want to say that even simple things like that is going to make a major difference in our policy decision-making process.
Okay, City Manager Wine, it sounds like you're going to be getting a lot more input as people have time to review the initial plan over the next week. I guess I would also ask you if it sounds like it is a living document, which we would expect it to be, but I would ask you to continue to distribute updates, like when there are major revisions to it, that you distribute those to the council. You don't necessarily have to give a big explanation, about it or a presentation, but I would just ask that as it get updated, I'm guessing the whole council would appreciate that, to have the most up-to-date versions.
Will do.
Any other follow-up questions, City Manager Wine, from any of the feedback or comments?
No, thank you for the comments, and I will distribute updates.
Let's move on to administrative reports. City Manager Wine, and you've got a guest with you tonight for this, Mr. Purdy, I think.
I do. Mayor and Council, thanks. I wanted to take a few moments on administrative report tonight to ask for, or I guess review with you, as I did in our individual meetings last week and this week, about our approach to the CARES Act funding for business assistance. And now I can't remember whether we said that Mr. Purdy would take it from here or whether I would, but I think what I outlined to you was that we know that coming from Washington County very soon is reimbursement funding from the Coronavirus Relief Fund that was distributed from the federal government to Washington County. And the funding, Tigard's share of this funding, as it will be distributed to our city, totals $1.5 million. It's going to allow for recapitalization of the business assistance grant program, so we can continue to support the business owners that have been impacted by COVID-19. We've had several phases of Tigard Cares, and we've made it to phase 4 with this funding that's coming in. So we'll be able to increase the commitment to minority-owned businesses in Tigard, and we'll be doing that in a similar way to the first few chapters of the Tigard Cares funding, including working with MISO as our partner, our community development financial institution, using the same eligibility recommendations to serve traditionally underserved businesses to ensure that we have an equitable distribution of funds. This chapter will also include a geographic equity element of it, and Mr. Purdy is here to answer questions, so that's something I think he wants to say a little more about. And that the funding distribution would, we're trying to be sure that we understand the evolving impact of the economic crisis that's been brought on by COVID-19. Our hope is that we would be dispersing grants to those previous awardees who received funding, and then also dispersing funding to those applicants who were on the wait list, and dispersing funding to new applicants. And so because he's far more conversant with the details, Mr. Purdy is here to answer any questions that you have. Mostly what I want to do is confirm with the council that this is an approach that works for you, and we want to proceed when the funding is received to begin that process. So, so mostly I want to make sure that you know about this funding and the fact that it will not just reimburse us for the funding that was part of the initial outlay for Tigard Cares, but also recapitalize our program so that more funding can be distributed. Mr. Purdy, do you have anything that I missed that you'd like to share with the council?
No, ma'am, that's you covered a very good introduction. I'm having a tough time with visual, so hopefully I still have a good audio if you have any questions.
Okay, council questions. Any councilor have a question or comment on this update?
Council President Goodhouse, just a clarification, City Manager Wine. So you're saying, so is that focus on minority-owned businesses, or also there's going to be focus, but also other businesses will be getting that, and those on the wait list that are not minority owned, or are they going to be getting it too, with the emphasis on minority-owned businesses first?
I think it would be worth it, Mr. Purdy. Could you speak to the eligibility recommendation or the eligibility criteria?
The only reason I was saying is I know that there was, during the first round of grants, there was businesses that weren't minority owned that did get it, so.
Absolutely. Council President Goodhouse, that's a good question. In our first round, in fact, 38% of the recipients of the just over 100 businesses we were able to support, 38% were minority owned. So pretty simple math to see the relationship between the number of non-minority owned business owners and the number of minority owned business owners who received support. I would like to improve upon that number with this next round, which is why we are adding a geographic equity lens to this. I'm working with the GIS team, and by the way, this is a great idea, but it was not mine. It was Kenny Asher, our community development director, who realized we can look at underserved and disadvantaged neighborhoods in the city where there are businesses, and find ways to help businesses that are in those neighborhoods, because that does more than help the business. That also helps that neighborhood when that business can reopen and stabilize. So that's one way we're making a minor change to this program. Yes, we want to start with the businesses that we've already funded, because we can improve upon the funding amount. We can offer more money now. with actually $1.6 million in county funds that have come from the Fed. So we'd like to bring those firms, the 100 firms or so that we funded, up to parity with this new funding level, and then return to that wait list where there are 350 or more firms that have expressed need. So we'd start with that, and then if we still have funding, we could open this up again to yet another round of solicitation and invitation. So by doing it that way, we keep a focus on equity, but we are being equitable and inclusive, meaning everybody who we can fund will have a chance, but we can't fund everybody. That's why we have to create some funding priorities. The funding priorities, real quickly, I have them on my sheet right here. Firms that were impacted by COVID-19, meaning a firm that was shut down completely had a higher impact than maybe somebody who just had a slowdown in business. Traditionally underserved and underbanked entrepreneurs is still a priority. Sole proprietors, independently owned firms, firms with 12 or fewer employees, firms generating less than $2 million a year. Again, these are some of the priorities we will place, but it doesn't exclude anybody. It just means that scoring on these points increase someone's likelihood of getting funding. That's all I have to that question. Hopefully I answered it well for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
And again, apologies for that.
And then the second part, I kind of asked the city manager when I talked to you. So are we, with that 1.5, are we going to replenish some of the money the city spent, or just use all of that towards the resources to the businesses?
Another good question. Let me restate that, because apologies, I am having connection problems. I think you asked if the funding we are going to receive, which is 1.6 million, if we're going to basically pay ourselves back for what we've expensed, or if it's going into grants. This money all, based on the contract we have with Washington County, this will all have to go into a grant program. So that's that amount of money. We are receiving a separate disbursement, as City Manager Line referenced, for another 150,000. Will go back to us as a reimbursement. We do not have to spend that on a grant program. So our plans are, this is like a donor-directed fund in concept, right? The county is saying, we got this money from the Fed, it's for small business loans. You have to use it for small business loans. And that's what the 1.6 million we're discussing right now is about. There is a smaller $150,000 reimbursement coming our way for the grant program we already rolled out. That was called Tigard Cares Phase 1.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other council comments or questions?
Councilor Lube, I just want to clarify. So this next round, Phase 4, according to the document, would be grants rather than Phase 1, where the limit was $1,500. They would be $3,000, $5,000, or $7,500 based upon the size of or the number of employees in the business. Is that correct?
Councilwoman Lube, you're absolutely correct. $2,500 for a sole proprietor with no storefront. That could be a entrepreneur operating out of her or his house, for instance. $5,000 for a entrepreneur or a business owner that has a storefront and or 1 to 3 employees, and then up to $7,500 for a business with a storefront and 4 or more employees. I would treat these as up to numbers. I will be asking MISO to help make some recommendations, some broad recommendations. For instance, maybe businesses in the restaurant category, so they have a storefront and 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 employees. Maybe that should be higher than other types of businesses with different expenses. So yes, 3 different categories. I've tried to tie these to operating and carrying expenses, meaning rent, storefront, and employees.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm excited to be able to continue to offer this support to our business community. I know as this crisis continues to unfold, and I would argue continuing to get worse in the last current couple of weeks, for a lot of people out there, it can be kind of scary to get out and spend some money when they're personally economically hurting, which is hurting our businesses. And so to be able to have this funding and to be able to turn around and use it for grants is something that, you know, is hopefully incredibly helpful and a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of our businesses that are really struggling right now. So thank you for your work on this to the city and Mr. Purdy.
Mr. Purdy, I have some feedback, and really it's more just a comment, and I did make it to City Manager Wine yesterday, but I'm going to make it to you again to emphasize it. I want to make sure that we do a better and more thorough job of advertising the availability of the program and also the criteria for the program to try to avoid businesses feeling frustrated by the sort of lack of, at least their perceived lack of clarity about both the criteria and the prioritization, and also feeling like there were, you know, important minority-owned businesses that just didn't hear at all about the program. And I just want to make sure that we do absolutely everything that we can to avoid that kind of a situation again. I know that in the speed at which we were doing and implementing the other program, it was hard to avoid that. But now we've had that experience, and we perhaps can be a little more planful and thoughtful and avoid those undesirable experiences for some business owners. Is that on your radar screen, I hope?
Yes, sir, and I understand completely. I also know that even with 1.6 million, we're still not going to be able to fund everybody who wants a grant. So there will still be businesses who say, "What about me?" I have 200 emails in my email box from businesses who we weren't able to fund. So yes, we will continue to reach out. The first time we did this, we used a business email call campaign to over 2,000 businesses. MISO made phone calls to traditionally underserved businesses that they knew of in the community. We did a press release. We did follow-up emails. We did, again, our own phone campaign and phone calls. So I'll continue to use every communication method I have. I guess the one caveat I need to be clear about is proposing that we start with the list of businesses who are on, in fact, our wait list, who have expressed need, and and that's a mix of, that's an inclusive mix of businesses across the city.
But that's the right. I think that's the right thing to do. That's the right place to start.
Yep, and I think we can get them, most all of them, funded and still have funding left over, again, for another call that we can, again, spread very widely. So that absolutely is on my my process approach to getting this funding out. But I just, again, I know we're not going to be able to fund everybody. I can't stress that enough. And you all know that breaks my heart. It's hard on you too.
All right. Any other council comments or questions on this?
I don't really have a question. This is Councilor Newton, but I concur with Councilor Lube. I think this is great, and I appreciate that we already have a method in place to get these funds out as quickly as is prudent. So thanks for your work on this, and I'm excited that we're going to be able to help some more businesses through this incredibly rough time we're in. So thanks.
City Manager Wine, did you have anything more on your administrative report?
That's all I have for tonight, Council. Thank you.
All right. We have no non-agenda items. There's no executive session scheduled. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
President Goodhouse, I move for adjournment.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Lube, and I'll take that as a second from Council President Goodhouse.
Yes.
City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.